Hello, students. Welcome to our today's class. And now we are going to look into the analysis of the play The Rivals by r.b.Sheridan. And I am Dr.R.Renuka Devi. Let us get into our class with the introduction of our playwright r.b.Sheridan. Richard Brinsley Sheridan was born in Dublin, Ireland on 30th October 1751 and died on 7 July 1860. He was brought to England when he was just 8 years old and he never returned back to Ireland thereafter. He was educated at a British boarding school where he was teased by his friends because of the profession of his father as an actor. He belongs to a literary family, and his mother, Frances Sheridan, was one of the successful playwright and novelist of English literature. And his grandfather was a close associate with Jonathan Swift. After completion of his education, Sheridan's family moved to Bath, where he fell in love with Elizabeth Linley, a famous and a beautiful singer of his period. After the marriage, with the desperate need for money, he wrote his first play, The Rivals, in 1775. But its initial performance received a poor attention from the audience. So Sheridan revised the play, and its second performance got enormous success among the audience. He earned a lot of amount from the theatre, and with that money he was able to purchase a seat in the parliament. For the next 32 years, he served in a variety of governmental jobs, and he became one of the most famous and respected orator of his period. He was always extravagant with money. In 1808, when his Drury Lane theatre was burned down in a fire, he was bankrupted and was also removed from the parliament. He spent his final years hounded by his creditors for returning the amount that they have lent to him. Now, let us look into the background situation in which Sheridan wrote his play, The Rivals. The Rivals was Sheridan's first play. At the time, he was newly wedded and was living in Bath. Based on the insistence of Sheridan, his wife, Elizabeth Linley, gave up her career as a singer, and that was considered as something as a proper for a gentleman's wife. But it was difficult for Elizabeth because she might have earned a large of sum of amount because of his career as a singer, but instead they have to lead a life of mean, and they started to entertain the gentry and noble people with her singing. Finally, in need of fun, Sheridan turned to the only craft that could gain him the large amount of remuneration. So he began his career as a writer. He had over the years written and published essays and poems, and among his papers were numerous unfinished plays, essays, and political tracts, but never he had undertaken such an ambitious project as that of a play, The Rivals. In short, however, he completed the play, The Rivals, with the need to earn money. Let us now see into the reception of the play. Okay, how it was received by the audience. As we have already seen in the introduction of the playwright, its initial performance was poor, got a poor reception among the audience. Yes, it was first performed at Covent Garden, London on 17th January 1775 with the comedian Mary Bulkley as Julia Melville. But it received a worse criticism from both the public and the critics for the length of the play and as well as the abusive language that was used by the character Sir Lucius O'Trigger. So Sheridan himself immediately withdrew the play and he apologized for the impression that was created by O'Trigger and which was indeed considered as a great insult to Ireland. So he himself re-returned the play and with the new actor Lawrence in the role of O'Trigger, the play was reopened on 28th January 1775 and it got a significant acclaim. And indeed, it became a favorite play among the royal families and received a high command performance for the next 10 years, and it was also recommended to be performed even in colonies. And it was the favorite play for George Washington. It became a standard show of the 19th century companies in England and US. The play is now considered to be one of the masterpieces of Sheridan, and the term malapropism was coined in reference to one of the characters in the play. Let us now look into the characters of the play, The Rivals. Sir Anthony Absolute, he is a wealthy baronet, and Captain Jack Absolute, his son, and the protagonist of a play who disguises himself as the Ensign Beverley in order to win the hands of Lydia Languish. Lydia Languish, a wealthy teenage heiress who's in love with Ensign Beverley without knowing that Captain Jack Absolute and Ensign Beverley are one and the same. Mrs. Malaprop, a widow, and Lydia's guardian, who was in her middle aged. And next we have Julia Melville, who was a cousin of Lydia Languish and a young relative of Absolute, and who is in love with Falkland. Right, Julia Melville was under the care of Anthony Absolute, the father of our protagonist, Jack Absolute. Falkland is a friend of Captain Jack Absolute and the lover of Julia Melville. Bob Acres. Bob Acres is again a friend of Jack Absolute, who's again a suitor for Lydia Languish. Next, we have Sir Lucius O'Trigger. So he is an Irish baronet and who was having an affection for Lydia Languish and wrote a lot of letter and receiving letter from Lucy under the name of Delia and thinking that Delia is Lydia. Next we have the minor characters Fogg, who's the servant of Captain Jack Absolute, and we have David, who is again the servant of Bob Acres, Thomas, the servant of Sir Anthony Absolute, and Lucy, so Lydia's servant maid. So all these were the characters in our play Rivals. So, regarding the plot of the play is set in 18th century Bath, a fashionable town of that time, and a lot of wealthy people used to visit the place in order to take the holy water, which they consider have some healing power to cure the diseases. The plot centers around the two young lovers, Lydia and Jack. Lydia was a young girl who reads a lot of novel and was always in a fantasy and romantic world and have believed that to have an affair, that is love affair, with a poor person will make her life more adventurous and thrilling. Knowing all this, Jack Absolute, who's a wealthy person, pretends himself to be Ensign Beverly, a poor army soldier, in order to win her hand. Lydia is very much enthralled with the idea of eloping with a poor soldier, in, but it was objected by her guardian, Mrs. Malaprop. After knowing that Ensign Beverly and Jack Absolute are one and the same, Lydia rejects him. After the rejection, Jack was called for a duel by other suitors of Lydia, like Bob Acres and Sir Lucius O'Trigger, and after knowing the feud between all these three persons, Lydia confesses her true affection for Jack Absolute and stops the fight, and the play ends with the party invited by Bob Acres, and it has a happy ending of two pairs of lovers, Lydia and Jack, and Falkland and Julia. So, Mrs. Malaprop is the chief comic character of this play, based on whose name we have a term called malapropism, which means the misuse of words that sound similar but mean something completely different. So we use malapropism to mean something but using some other word that means some other meaning. Okay, so for example, if she want to say as alligator, she says as alligatory, and if she want to say as pinnacle, she used to say as pineapple, right? So the she uses the words that have a similar sound, but she want to convey something different. So this is the plot of our play, The Rivals. So it's all about the relationship of young lovers Lydia and Jack, and Julia and Falkland. There are a lot of literary elements used in the play The Rivals. It belongs to the genre of comedy of manners, and it's a comic play. The language in which this play was written is in English. It was set in Bath of 18th century. It was comic and light-hearted in its tone and mood. The protagonist of the play is Jack Absolute, and the antagonist is Sir Lucius O'Trigger. The major conflict of the play is that Jack must keep his wealthy background as a secret from his beloved Lydia, while at the same time he has to obey the wishes of his domineering father. So that could be the major conflict of the play, that he has to hide his secret as a wealthy person before Lydia. So the climax occur when the duel is interrupted by Malaprop, Antony, Lydia, and Julia, while Lydia confesses her true affection for Jack and accepts his love. So the foreshadowing of the play occurs in the very opening scene of the play, in which the servants gossip about the relationship of Jack and Lydia, while they were discussing that Jack Absolute disguises himself as Ensign Beverly in order to win the hand of Lydia, which foreshadows the fact that the servants will involve in the main character's affair and going to contribute a lot of confusion in the play. So the understatement occurs when Jack Absolute learns that his father wants him to marry Lydia Languish, but he understates his interest in her, much to Antony's dismay. So even though he is in relationship with Lydia, he pretends that he accepts her only for the wish of his father. So the paradox is mainly with Falkland, who tries to test Julia's love for him, but he ends up betraying her trust by lying. Thus, a gesture that he thought would make him feel better about his relationship causes him to lose the woman he loves the most. Additionally, Lydia wants to marry a poor man and to prove to the world that love conquers all, but she doesn't know that she has fallen in love with a wealthy captain, that is Ensign Beverly and Jack Absolute are one and the same, and is not actually rebelling against the wish of her elders. So the parallelism is between Jack and Lydia are parallel to the other young couple in the play Julia and Falkland, because Jack and Lydia are very much affectionated, and Jack want to disguise himself in order to win her lover's heart, but Falkland was always in a suspicious and jealous about Julia's relationship with him. So the use of dramatic devices, there are many use of aside in which a character speaks a line that other characters cannot hear but the audience can. These moments only lend more tension to the dramatic irony of the plot. So all these were the various literary elements that are used in the play The Rivals. Regarding the themes of the play, true love is the main theme of the play, The Rivals. So, true love, overcoming obstacles, rivalry, and forgiveness is shown throughout this entire play. Sheridan wrote the play The Rivals at the age of 26, hoping to turn the bad publicity into good and make money out of this process. Even though it is not his autobiographical work, Sheridan reflects his personal experience in this play, Rivals. Confession about who's who drives the plot of the rivals, because the characters disguises themselves in order to accomplish their desires. So false identity is the main theme of the play The Rivals. Regarding the language and pretension, the characters in the play whom Sheridan portrays with respect, like Captain Absolute, Julia, and even Lydia, all have a mastery of language, while those characters he holds up for mockery lack such skills. The role of women in 18th century, while the play Rivals was written, was were a firm notion for how women should behave in the society. So prior to their marriage, a girl of noble birth was supposed to be pure and simple in her understanding of the world, and place her trust upon her elders, who would select a man for her to marry. So they have to obey their elders during that time. Courtship and generational conflict, the rivals revolve around two engaged couples, Lydia and Captain Absolute, Falkland and Julia. But in the play, getting married is not as simple as falling in love, because the older generation take an active role in approving their relationship. Gentlemanly honor and duelling. For men of British nobility in the 18th century, honor was an important social institution. To be considered gentleman, one had to be honorable, which meant being truthful, virtuous, and well mannered. So, all these were the major themes used in the play The Rivals. So, regarding Sheridan and his world, he reflects his personal experience. So, false identities and artifice. So, it tells the disguise of the characters. Language, about the language that was used by the higher class people, and that of the servants language used in the play. The role of women, they have to be very sincere to their elders, and courtship, it was decided by the elder generation. The gentlemanly honor, so the person who is more virtuous, truthful, or considered as someone who is more honorable person. So, in our final slide, we are going to look into the significance of the title. So, The Rivals was written at and set in the 18th century, is a play about individualism, because all the characters have shown their individual characters. They just want or accomplish their true desires, right? Its title refers to the young men who are competing for the hand of Lydia Languish. So the rival means the duel between the young people who want to fight against each other in order to win the hand of Lydia Languish. The notion that she wishes to make up her own mind with the suitor she prefers makes it very much a play of its time. So her final decision to choose her own person reflects the time period in which the play was written. So, with this, we come to the end of our class. So, we have seen the introduction of a playwright, um, R.B. Sheridan, and then the background situation in which he wrote the play, then the reception of the play, how the audience received the play, and then we have seen the various characters and the plot summary of the play, and we move on to the various elements and themes and significance of the play. So thank you, students.